right now, the Alpine Formula One team has built, without a doubt, their fastest, most aggressive car in years. They are actively beating world champions on a Sunday.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredible to watch.
But then, if you look at the paddock right now, that same team is issuing public declarations to fight off furious accusations. People are saying they're actively, deliberately sabotaging their own driver.
It is absolute scorched earth.
Welcome back to another deep dive. I am talking directly to you because whether you follow every single lap of motorsport or you just find human psychology fascinating, you have to hear how quickly things are unraveling in this 2020 Because usually when you picture the sport, you imagine cold, hard, undeniable logic. The stopwatch proves you right, and the debate is over. It's supposed to be math at 300 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, it's marketed as this beautiful, brutal meritocracy. You bring the best aerodynamic package, you stand on the top step, period. But that pristine logic has completely evaporated in the heat of these new 2026 technical regulations. The paddock is an absolute pressure cooker right now. We're only 3 races into this new era, and the heavyweights are visibly bleeding.
Oh, heavily bleeding.
You have these generational talents, guys like Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso, practically pulling their hair out because these new cars are so violently difficult to tame. And right in the middle of this massive power vacuum, we have this explosive paradox over at Alpine.
Okay, so let's unpack this. How does a highly corporate racing team go from celebrating a literal engineering renaissance to defending themselves against rabid social media mobs demanding justice for some kind of inside job?
It's wild. It really is.
To get to the bottom of this, we need to completely separate the asphalt from the internet. We have to look at the actual machinery first, because Pierre Gasly just made a statement that should absolutely terrify Red Bull and Ferrari.
Oh, the quote about the car.
Yeah, exactly. He called this current Alpine the best car he has driven in his entire career, putting it right up there with his 2021 AlphaTauri.
And, we know how potent that 2021 car was. That thing was a rocket ship.
It was.
For Gasly to invoke that specific benchmark, to say he feels that plugged into the machinery again, that is a massive warning shot to the rest of the grid. And the raw telemetry completely backs him up.
The numbers don't lie.
They really don't. Just look at the scoreboard right now. Gasly hasn't dropped out of the top 10 once this season. He took 10th in Australia, fought like a dog to get 6th in China, and then delivered a total absolute masterclass to finish 7th in Japan.
15 championship points in just 3 rounds.
Exactly. And to put that into perspective for you, that is 68% of his entire points tally for the whole 2025 season, achieved in just a few weeks.
That is staggering. He is sitting 8th in the World Drivers' Championship right now. Do you know who is in 9th?
Max Verstappen.
Yes. He is 3 points ahead of Max Verstappen. We are looking at an Alpine legitimately outscoring a Red Bull on pure pace.
It's a completely upside-down reality.
And that defense Gasly put up in Suzuka, that wasn't a fluke of strategy. It wasn't a lucky safety car. He slammed the door on Verstappen in a pure white-knuckle straight-line fight.
He really did.
Now, look, I know Alpine made the massive and frankly controversial call to drop their own engine program and just buy Mercedes power units for 2026.
Right, which was huge news internally.
But if the Mercedes power unit is the silver bullet here, why is Williams floundering at the back of the pack?
Bolting a new engine into an F1 car is like swapping out a smartphone's processor. It's not just about the new chip, it's about how the entire motherboard handles the thermal load, the packaging, all of it.
What's fascinating here is, you've isolated the exact reason Enstone's engineering team is getting so much respect in the paddock right now. It is absolutely not just the Mercedes engine.
Right.
Alpine has achieved the holy grail of these new regulations. They found a wide operating window for their chassis, which is so rare.
It is incredibly rare. Let's break down how rare that actually is. Australia is a bumpy, aggressive street circuit. To go fast there, your suspension has to be super compliant. It has to ride the curbs without the car's floor losing its aerodynamic seal with the ground.
Because the second you lose that seal, you lose all your downforce.
Exactly. You become a passenger. But then China is entirely different. It's completely front-limited, meaning it just eats front tires alive with these endless sweeping corners.
Right. Turn 1 is just brutal.
Brutal. And then you go to Japan, which is this high-speed, high-downforce roller coaster with massive lateral G-forces.
So you basically have 3 completely contradictory aerodynamic demands in 3 weeks.
Precisely. A car that is soft enough for the bumps in Melbourne usually gets absolutely torn apart in the high-speed corners of Suzuka.
Yet the Alpine delivered extreme, adaptable performance at every single one of them.
They did. They have engineered a floor and a suspension geometry that remains incredibly stable, regardless of the track surface. The airflow just doesn't detach. Gasly isn't just surviving these races, he is actively telling the team on the radio that they can hunt down the leading pack.
But this is where the entire fairy tale just completely derails.
Though violently derails.
Because if this chassis is such a masterpiece, how do we explain Franco Colapinto's side of the garage?
Yeah.
It's not about podiums over there. It's a vicious, scorched earth narrative. The controversy got so loud, so toxic, that Alpine's executive board actually had to publish an extensive, highly detailed document, specifically denying that they are sabotaging their own multi-million-dollar asset.
Which is unprecedented.
Yeah.
Look, if we connect this to the bigger picture, internal team rivalries are the absolute foundation of Formula One. This sport thrives on intra-team warfare. We have the historical scars to prove it, right? The sheer psychological destruction of Prost and Senna at McLaren, or the toxic meltdown between Alonso and Hamilton in 2007. Drivers in the exact same equipment are naturally going to collide.
They want to beat the guy in the identical car more than anyone else.
Exactly. But a team having to officially deny auto-sabotage, that defies every single economic and physical law of the sport.
I want to try and contextualize this for you, the listener, because the accusations just don't make any sense to me. Imagine a massive tech giant rolling out a revolutionary operating system.
Okay.
But because of sheer server bandwidth limitations, they can only push it to 50% of their users on day one. It's not some malicious plot against the other half of the users. It is a strict, undeniable logistical limitation. You physically cannot manufacture the future fast enough.
And that tech analogy perfectly maps onto Formula One's manufacturing reality. I think the general public often assumes these cars are built like road cars on some clean assembly line.
Right, stamping out parts.
Yeah, they aren't. Formula One is a rapid, unending prototyping race. When an aerodynamicist finds a breakthrough in the wind tunnel, let's say a new floor edge that seals the air better and gives you 5 extra points of downforce.
Which is massive.
Massive. You don't sit around and wait a month to manufacture 2 identical copies just to keep team morale high.
No, you build one and you throw it right into the fight immediately.
Exactly. You take those raw carbon fiber sheets, you bake them under intense heat and pressure in an autoclave. And that process takes significant time to cure.
You can't rush physics.
You really can't.
Yeah.
And the second it comes out of that pressurized oven, it gets flown directly to the track. And realistically, that single, lonely upgrade goes to whichever driver is higher in the championship or whoever is better positioned that specific weekend.
Which brings us directly to what actually happened in China. Alpine had to change a gearbox component on Colapinto's car.
Right.
And in F1, a gearbox isn't just a box of cogs inside the engine bay. The entire rear suspension mounts directly to it.
It is a structural part of the chassis.
Exactly. So because of the knock-on effects of that swap and a sheer lack of physical inventory for the new 2026 deck, Colapinto had to run older, low-performance aerodynamic parts just to make everything physically fit together.
It was entirely about manufacturing capacity, not malice.
Why on earth would Alpine intentionally handicap their own car when every single championship point translates to literally millions of dollars in prize money?
They wouldn't. It's that simple. They are in a brutal dogfight to secure that 4th fastest spot on the grid. But, manufacturing delays alone don't start internet fires.
No, they don't.
The fan base needed a spark. And they got 2 highly visible, genuinely terrifying incidents on the asphalt that acted as accelerants for this whole conspiracy.
Let's look at those sparks, starting with the collision in China. Colapinto is rejoining the circuit from the pit lane on cold tires, totally vulnerable.
Very tricky situation.
Up comes Esteban Ocon in the Haas, carrying significantly more speed, and they make heavy contact. But here is the crucial detail that the mob completely ignored. Ocon, who is notorious for never, ever backing down from a fight, immediately took full 100% responsibility.
Which is rare for him.
Right. He got out of his car, he sought out Colapinto in the media pen to apologize face-to-face, and then he posted a public apology taking all the blame.
It was a textbook racing incident, resolved professionally by the 2 men actually risking their lives in the cockpits.
Exactly.
But the second incident, the one at Suzuka, is where the technical realities of the new regulations clashed violently with public perception. Oliver Bierman is pushing absolutely flat out, comes screaming up behind a slower-moving Colapinto, takes massive evasive action to avoid rear-ending him, completely loses control, and fires his car straight into the turn 12 barriers.
It was a terrifying impact, just brutal.
Huge G-forces.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The knee-jerk reaction online was vicious. Fans immediately accused Colapinto of brake testing Behrman, intentionally slamming on his brakes on a high-speed straight just to catch the trailing driver off guard.
Which is one of the most dangerous things you could do in motorsport.
But Alpine stepped in with the raw telemetry, the actual unedited data pulling off the car, to prove that wasn't true at all.
And that telemetry reveals the hidden absolute danger of the new 2026 rules. Listen, these new power units rely heavily on a 50-50 split between the internal combustion engine and the electrical deployment.
Half gas, half battery.
The problem is electrical energy runs out fast. When a car depletes its battery at the end of a long straight, a phenomenon the engineers call clipping, the car suddenly loses hundreds of horsepower in a fraction of a second.
It is literally like hitting an invisible aerodynamic wall.
Exactly. So Behrman, who still had electrical energy deploying from his battery, came up behind Colapinto, who was heavily clipping.
So Colapinto didn't touch the brakes.
He didn't touch them at all. He just ran out of battery deployment. It creates these massive, terrifying closing speeds between the cars. Speed differentials we haven't really seen before.
Right.
It wasn't a brake test. It wasn't Colapinto driving erratically. It was a structural characteristic of the new hybrid systems. And it's such a severe safety issue right now that the FIA is taking this break in the calendar to completely review how energy deployment is regulated.
The team definitively proved Colapinto did nothing wrong.
Nothing.
But the mob didn't care about hybrid clipping or battery deployment. They weaponized both incidents anyway. I mean, despite Ocon's sincere apologies, despite the telemetry proving Suzuka was just a regulatory quirk, a deeply radicalized segment of the fan base launched an absolutely vile campaign.
It was awful to watch unfold.
We are talking about death threats against Ocon. We are talking about insane accusations that Alpine's own mechanics were deliberately setting Colapinto up for these dangerous situations.
They completely abandoned rationality. And look, we have to acknowledge that this isn't an isolated problem centered around just one driver. The sport as a whole is facing a systemic escalation in digital hostility.
It's getting worse every year.
It really is. If we look back just 1 year to the 2025 season at Imola, we saw the exact same playbook. Colapinto and Yuki Tsunoda had a minor coming together on track. The vitriol aimed at Tsunoda reached such a toxic, dangerous pitch that Mohammed Ben Sulayem, the president of the FIA, had to personally intervene.
Right, he had to write an open letter.
Yes, he launched an entire global campaign called United Against Online Abuse because it's spiraling out of control.
I understand the governing body stepping in, obviously they have to, but let's talk about the teams themselves. I have to wonder about the psychological toll on the actual pit wall. Are we reaching a breaking point where the threat of social media backlash is actually forcing race engineers to alter how they make fundamental strategic decisions?
That is the million-dollar question.
I mean, if you are an Alpine aerodynamicist and you know that bolting a single new front wing onto Gasly's car instead of Colapinto's is going to result in your own mechanics getting death threats online, doesn't that inherently compromise how you run the race team?
That is the terrifying reality these teams are waking up to right now. Yes, it absolutely creates a chilling effect on engineering decisions. Teams are now forced to operate as massive crisis management firms on race weekends.
Which is not what they are built for.
Not at all. They are drafting these exhaustive, panicked press releases about autoclave schedules and gearbox integration just to pacify an audience that largely doesn't understand or even care about the actual physics of carbon fiber production.
They just want a villain.
Exactly. And when your development strategy is dictated by the fear of public backlash rather than the ruthless, calculated pursuit of lap time, the structural integrity of the competition begins to crack.
Which brings this entire conversation right back to you. Why should you care about the internal PR nightmare of a French racing team? Because whether you are navigating the corporate world, leading a team, or frankly just existing on the internet today, this deep dive shows how incredibly dangerous an information vacuum can be.
It really is a cautionary tale.
It proves how a simple lack of absolute transparency, and look, even if that lack of transparency is just the literal time it takes to bake a carbon fiber wing in an oven, can be hijacked by a passionate, uninformed crowd and mutated into a malicious, full-blown conspiracy.
This raises an incredibly important question for any high-performance industry operating in the public eye. How do you balance your absolute duty of care, actually protecting the mental health of your drivers and your factory workers, while simultaneously managing the instant gratification expectations of a global, highly reactive digital fan base?
You can't please everyone.
You can't. Alpine is writing that survival guide right now, in real time, under immense pressure.
So what does this all mean? Let's distill this down to its core. Alpine has achieved the impossible under these brutal 2026 regulations. They have built an absolute rocket ship. Pierre Gasly is driving with supreme confidence, literally staring down the reigning world champion.
He's on the form of his life.
But the team's most existential battle isn't taking place on the asphalt against Red Bull or Ferrari. It's taking place on servers. They are fighting a psychological war against the internet.
They have conquered the aerodynamics, but they are drowning in the noise.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly uncomfortable reality to ponder. We started this deep dive talking about the cold, hard logic of the stopwatch, the romantic ideal that motorsport is a purely equal fight between two brilliant drivers.
The ultimate meritocracy.
Right, but in an era driven by asymmetrical prototyping, where single raw carbon parts are flown in overnight just to gain a fraction of a tenth of a second, is the concept of two teammates ever having strictly equal machinery actually an impossible myth?
It's a fascinating thought.
Have we reached a point of technological speed where teams can simply no longer promise absolute fairness, no matter how loudly the internet screams for it? Keep that in mind the next time you see two identical-looking cars line up on the grid. Are they really fighting the exact same war? Keep digging, keep questioning the narrative, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.